So this section is for the D-Star geeks, the D-Star faithful, the repeater owners, soon-to-be repeater owners, people thinking about being a repeater owner. They don't let me out much, but when they do, it's to talk technical about D-Star and D-Star repeaters and maybe new products. You just never know. I guess for the brethren, I should start by saying remote system linked. So we're going to talk about G3, but I thought it would be interesting to talk first about the evolution. The first version was actually called V1, but to try to be consistent, I renamed it to G1. And the first time I saw this was in 2006 when we were putting up repeaters, W4DOC repeater, which was one of the first ones. Of course, Texas came up, and New York, and San Francisco, and D-Star was just getting a foothold in 2006. And as John mentioned before, all we could do with it at that point was to call sun route. So everywhere we wanted to go, every time a new repeater came up, we had to go and reprogram our radio with a new memory channel to say, I need to call sun route to this repeater or this user that just came on. And we rapidly ran out of memory channels, so we had to start dropping people out. At one point, we had every repeater outside of Japan in our radio, and we could connect to it, talk through it directly. But D-Star really grew rapidly, and soon we had to drop people out that we didn't like. And very quickly, we got to the point that we couldn't get everybody that we did like into the radio, which is a good thing for D-Star. When it first came out, the version 1 or G1 of the software, it was really designed for Japan and the way Japan does repeaters, which is very different than anywhere else in the world. They have locked down their repeaters. They have control by their equivalent of the FCC on the repeaters. They really limit the types of things that you can do with the repeater so that they had a very stable network. Well, we found very rapidly in the version 1 software that didn't really work well for the rest of the world, especially the US, where we were first testing this out. And we had synchronization issues. We had problems when we'd have to take down the entire network and tell every administrator to run a clean program that would clean their database and then bring it up in a ordered fashion. When any bad data got into the network, we didn't have a mechanism to remove it. So there were lots of issues that we faced that were not faced by the originators of gateway software. It was also at the time on CentOS 5, which is a Red Hat, I don't want to say knockoff, but a copy of Red Hat, which Red Hat sells their sales and support for Red Hat Linux. And the CentOS project takes that same source code, because Linux is all open source, and they duplicated it and renamed it CentOS. And so we had a data center hardened, proven version of Linux, very stable version to run on. One of the problems was the Icom software, instead of using the packages like the web server and the database server, which are Apache and Postgres, that comes with the operating system and gets updated with security updates, they took those software projects and compiled them in to the version 1 software. So we were really stuck with the version from 2006 they put in, and anytime there were security updates, we weren't able to do those updates. And there have been some very famous problems that have come up on the internet for Apache and Postgres and Linux that needed to be fixed, and we didn't have the ability to do that. So we really relied a lot on the firewalls that were in front of the system to keep the bad guys out. But even then, there were vulnerabilities that we needed to fix. So they heard us, and at that time, we created the D-Star admin group, which was just dedicated to gateway repeater owners. So only those folks could get on this network. And here's the first message from 2006 from Tim Barrett. He liked to be the first message on many different groups. So it's been over 10 years, over 11 years now, that we first started this group of D-Star outside of Japan. In 2007, I released D+, the first version, which was basically 1.0. It was really 0.100, in keeping with the way Linux was released. There was a 0 release, several 0 releases. And that added functionality of being able to link the systems together. So we weren't limited by the call sign routing, which definitely has its application, but it limits you to only being able to talk between two repeaters and not being able to hear what's going on the remote repeater. So once you linked two repeaters together, you were able to, for everyone on a repeater, to talk to everyone else on the other repeater without having to reprogram their radio to do that. It added other features that I was used to as an FM repeater manager, like echo test. The users want to know, how well am I getting into the repeater? Well, there was no way to do that. You had to call somebody, your packets had to go across the internet to the other repeater. Somebody on the other repeater had to come back and give you a signal report. So there really wasn't a good way to tell, am I getting to the repeater? Is there a problem between the repeater over the internet to the other repeater, or from the other repeater out via RF to the end user? So I added echo test and announcements. Another thing that we like to do on our repeaters is announce, when's the net going to be, what's going on with the weather, what's the temperature, different things that many FM repeater systems, especially when they're club-owned, like to do for their users. And that actually became a very popular feature. The W4DOC repeater, which is in downtown Atlanta on the Bank of America Tower, it's owned by the Atlanta Radio Club. And a benefit that ARC provided to its users was the ability to make the announcements. So we had hourly announcements that said basically W4DOC digital repeater. So I made the first one of those, and then we had members that had D-Star radios record that very same thing. All they had to do was an echo test, and it would save that echo test file on the computer, on the gateway. We'd rename it, put it in the list, and then every different hour of the day, a different member of the radio club was announcing the repeater system. And that not only got people coming into the club because it was cool, but it got members of the club into D-Star. They went out and bought D-Star radios so that they could be a part and they could hear themselves once or twice a day announce. We, as an FM repeater manager, we were also used to being able to join linked repeater networks, like the Southeastern Repeater Net. We didn't really have the ability to do that easily with the existing software, so that's when we created the reflectors. And as John mentioned, that's just a conference bridge where you can have multiple repeaters and users all connected and talking to each other. So For example, each year at Dayton, one of the reflectors is designated the Dayton reflector, and literally hundreds of repeaters were linked in, and hundreds of users would link in and all be listening for what's going on at Dayton this year. So that was a feature that wasn't available in the original software. A lot of the products that we came out with were not meant to be products. They were meant to allow us as admins of a D-Star repeater to manage the repeater. I mean, as a trustee, you need to monitor your repeater. Well, what if you're not in hearing distance of your repeater? So AE4JY, Mo Wheatley, and I sat down and talked about, well, we can take that AMBA chip, the AMBA 2000, and put it on a little board with a microprocessor and a USB interface, plug it into your computer, and then through software designed that understands the D-Star network, connect in just like we were a repeater. And that was one of the first devices that came on the air, and it was mainly because we wanted to monitor our D-Star gateway when we went out of town or when we were out of range. Atlanta's a large area, and you don't get W4DOC 30, 40 miles out where there's still a lot of population in Atlanta. So we wanted to be able to get access to it. So we made this device, wrote the software, plugged it into the D+ to make sure that it worked properly, and then decided, this is a product. That's where this product line was born, just out of the necessity of a repeater manager needing to monitor their repeater. And this device, the only thing these little dongles are there for is to compress and decompress the voice. The D-Star protocol is open. You can write software that talks to it. The only thing that's proprietary is that DVSI AMBA chip. So we just needed a mechanism to encode and decode the voice in the D-Star format. There was an option to buy firmware and put it in, or write software with libraries from DVSI where we didn't have to have the chip, but the entry price was about $150,000 at the time just to start, and then you had to pay a per seat royalty. So that's why we kept with the hardware. And here's Tim again. This is the first post on the DV Dongle Yahoo group. And that was in 2007. I was able to backtrack the dates on when we did all this stuff by going to Yahoo and saying, okay, when did we post this? And when was this group created? So in 2008, the second release came out. It really cleaned up a lot of the issues that we saw with bad data and the ability to recover from bad data. Still required call-sign routing. In this example, you see W4DOC or /W4DOC space C, and that would allow me to be on a different repeater in the Atlanta area and have my voice come out on the W4DOC module C, which is the 2-meter repeater here. They did have multicast groups limited to 10, and they, as Ed mentioned earlier, they had to duplicate each stream going to whatever site the multicast supported. So that meant you needed not only the bandwidth of the stream coming in, but also 10 times the bandwidth going out. And for D-Star gateways, most of the D-Star gateways, especially at that time, were using ADSL links, which had very limited upstream bandwidth. And so most of them couldn't support more than 1 or 2 streams going up, much less 10. So that's when D-Plus 2.0 was created. And that supported G2 and allowed not only the gateway to gateway via command line, but also the reflectors, more robust support for reflectors, added the remote system linked announcements, the things that we wanted for our repeater to do that our FM repeater did. It also added access control, so now repeater administrators could say, you know, this person is a problem and we don't want them linking, or we're going to have a net at Sunday night at 8 o'clock and we need to make sure that nobody tries to link in or connect into our repeater when we're running our club net on Sunday night. It gave you that functionality. It also allowed you to send text messages from the command line. So if I knew somebody was on the repeater and I was logged in as an admin, I could send them a text message that would go over D-Star and it would show up on their radio. This was another one that we really didn't plan on making a product. It was I'm tired of using the speaker and mic on my PC. I want to be able to get up and go to the refrigerator or walk around the yard or walk the dog in the neighborhood. So we took out the AMBA chip. We put in a GMSK modem chip, which had RF capabilities. And that allowed us to do the same thing we did with the DV dongle, but then to walk around the yard, around the neighborhood, and get access using our HT, because the HT already had that chip in it. So we didn't need to duplicate that. And I beat Tim to the punch and made the first post. Actually, he made the first post. You see this as message 2. He made the first post, but it was before we announced the product. So I made him delete his post. And I got the first post on the DVAP dongle site. It's hard to believe how long ago these devices came out and how D-Star has grown and survived. And the DV dongle, the little blue box, we decided we could make a smaller form factor even than some of the other devices that came out by going to a BGA package. And so now the DV3K dongle, which I think Ed showed earlier, just looks like a thumb drive. And it has the new AMBA 3000 chip, which supports many of the new digital modes that are used besides D-Star. So Fusion, the DMR, he's showing that device to the audience. And that required DV Tool 2.1. That was 2015. Hard to believe it's already been 2 years. And what this talk is really about is the third release of Icom Gateway software. Still based on call sign routing, but we no longer were tied to CentOS version 5, which is end of life. It now supports CentOS 6 and CentOS 7, including 64-bit versions. You know, any computers you buy today are going to have an Intel chip or now an AMD chip that's 64-bit. So we needed to support 64-bit operating systems, and Icom provided that. And they did that not by just giving us a tarball that we had to go in and compile the system and load it into different places, but they used RPM packages, which were the default packages for the Red Hat-based releases. So it's Red Hat Package Manager type packages. So now they're distributing software the way that the rest of the world has been distributing Linux software for the last 10 years. They really made a major leap forward, but the biggest leap forward was to remove the packages that they hard-coded in, the Apache web server and the Postgres database, they now allow you to use the operating system versions. So whenever there's a security vulnerability that's found, you can do the operating system upgrade, and it still works. This is probably the biggest benefit because, one, CentOS 5 was end of life. Two, there were already known vulnerabilities out there that people could exploit with CentOS 5, and we had no mechanism to update that. Well, today with release G3, we do. And it uses all the standard operating system security mechanisms that are there. And we were talking about devices earlier, and you never know when there's going to be new devices coming out. So, a little teaser. This is how things come to life. It's kind of kludgy, but it's interestingly, it works kludged up like that. So you could actually create a board that had functionality. And, you know, there's so much technology in the radios now, like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and maybe even physical Ethernet. You just never know when a new device might pop out.
So what might this become?
You've gotten the hints that you're going to get so far. You should be able to figure it out from those hints. Do you have any questions in the room on the G3 software or anything else here?
You know, one of the things that when Icom came out with the ID-51Plus2, it was assumed I could just turn it on and it would work. But it does require the G3 upgrade on your local repeater to be able to have the access point and terminal features. So as we were saying, there's about, what was the number, Ray? 56 of the 1,000+ repeaters in the U.S. have now upgraded, and you're going to see more and more of those coming about. But G3 is a requirement to be able to use the +2 features.
And in fact, if you're in the Atlanta area...
correction, gentlemen, now there's 57. So they are starting to multiply.
Excellent. And those include W4DOC from the Atlanta Radio Club in downtown Atlanta, WD4STR in Lawrenceville, and
KJ4BDF and
KJ4BDF somewhere in the boonies of North Georgia. And this week, WX4GPB just came online, which is Stone Mountain. And that's running G3.
HRO.
And HRO.
And is it Fayetteville running that, David? Not yet. The Fayetteville repeater in the southwest side of Atlanta is going to be having it shortly.
Now, one of the questions that we saw earlier from the registrations is how is G3's upgrade going? And how do you get in line to get the software? With US Root not being owned by Icom, there's been some fun things that have occurred from that Rob and I could talk offline on. But we're not the owner of the database. We can go to the DSync, D-Star website and see all the call signs of the repeaters. But we don't have the sysop names. We don't have the sysop email addresses. That database is K5TIT and you guys. So in talking with Jim McClellan with the K5TIT group, I'm like, can you give me the database? Well, no, you can't have it. So we worked out a way of them distributing an email. And some people are like, why didn't Icom do it? Well, there's a reason why. Privacy. You guys are registered with them on their gateway, not on our US route. It's not ours. And he's put together a team of people that have worked on scripts. The first release was a little bit shaky. There's been a lot of adjustments that have been made. John calls me up. He goes, I just got it. What the heck are you guys doing? And it was easy for me to go, it's not me, man. But they seem to be where all the hard work and effort of the U.S. Root admin team to get things going where it's smoothly. And John, while you pointed that out, I'm not supposed to officially say anything, so thank you.
So I will say it. There's some of the administrators that kind of support the K5 TIT team. One of them sitting right here, and another gentleman out in California who really cleaned up a lot of things. We did some testing. I helped with a little bit of the testing, but they really cleaned things up. And just as an example of that, we were at our state ARES meeting here in Georgia just a few weeks ago, and the administrator for the LJ Georgia repeater came up to me and he said, oh, I've upgraded to G3. I said, I didn't hear you ask for help or anything. No, I got it done. So you're going to see more and more that will be upgrading, just like Ray said, one more while we've been here.
And kudos to Brian Rude, NJ6N, who's the script meister or script kitty, I call him, of the Trust Server team. He wrote the installer script, and it is very nice. It really works well.
It beats the G2 installation by far.
It takes a whole group of people to make it happen, because with those of you that have been from the G1, where we had the D-Star 101 classes on how to install and how to be a system administrator, it's come a long way. So what I can see happening is more and more growth as more and more of you get involved in it. Now, for you system operators that are hesitating and, well, we're not going to respond to the email, the Gateway G3 upgrade is free for a short period of time. The stipulations are that it's been on US Root and synchronizing with US Root. All your sysop information is accurate with them. If you've been synchronizing but you haven't updated your sysop info, get with them, get them the information. They'll send the information to me to see if everything looks kosher, and then we will go ahead and send them the approval. There will be a hardware disk that will be coming out in April. But those that abandon US Root or the ones that are putting new systems on the air, there's going to be a fee for the G3 software. So act now while it's still got that four-letter F word that a lot of hams love, free.
So we're getting close on time, so I'm going to try to run through some questions right quick. So let's try to keep the answers as short as we can. Question from KU0V: are D-Star devices compatible with G3?
Yes.
Short answer.
So from K3MG, can a D-Star repeater be hardwired to a reflector? If so, with a link established, can you get access to another reflector, i.e. 63C or something like that?
There's some software, John discussed it earlier, called Monlink, and it allows you to schedule when you want reflectors and what your default reflector is. So you can say, I normally want to be on 30 Charlie, but at 7 p.m. on Sunday, I need to go to a different reflector, 2 alpha, for a different net, and then pop back. And you can say, if I'm not linked, then link after a certain period of time so that I normally stay. And that software gives you the ability to have a user unlink the system, go and link it somewhere else, have QSOs on that system, and then when there's no more activity, it can automatically relink to the original reflector.
That's one of the things we do in Georgia is most of the repeaters have what we call in Monlink default link to reflector 30 Bravo. So by default, they're sitting there. But if Kent comes through Georgia and he wants to connect back to reflector 1 Charlie, he can unlink it, link to 1 Charlie, and then when he finishes, it'll time out, and then it will go back to 30 Bravo, so it's sitting at its default location.
So here's a question from KD4EXY. Is there a way to set the 5100 to scan reflectors from one repeater site?
Yeah, there's not really a scanning functionality for reflectors.
Now, you can scan when you're in...
You can't scan reflectors.
Oh, no, not scan reflectors. Sorry, I'm thinking repeaters.
But the reflector is connected to a repeater, and to scan it, the repeater would have to connect to different reflectors, which is not a possibility.
Right.
Question local?
Kirk from KK5 USA, and I was on site at LJ when we put G3 in, and Blue Ridge
Great.
also has
Excellent
it.
work.
Pardon?
Excellent work.
I just sat there and watched it go.
That's the best kind of work.
That's the best kind, yes. I supplied the donuts and coffee. It does take a little time to put it in. I'd also like to show the appreciation for your putting this show on today, for all of the people that are involved in having this work. And Mr. Davis, I'd like to go back and one of the earlier comments you made about putting messages on. Perhaps at a later time today you could tell us how to do that. I can't find it on my 5100 or 51.
Yeah, okay, that's in a menu setting.
Yeah.
Under My Station.
My Station?
And then I think messages.
Okay. Because I know you can get the call sign and pretty much just the name.
Call sign and 4 digits under your call sign. And then if you look under Menu, My Station, and Messages, you can select different messages. Like, for example, I'll have one at Hamcation or en route to Dayton. So you can select different canned messages.
That's where
you can change those.
Okay. Well, thanks again for putting on this demonstration today.
Today's question from K1AUS. What modulation type does D-Star use? PPM, PCM, or something non-FM related?
I think we answered that earlier. It's GMSK.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to build a device or plug into the mic input that would allow non-D-Star radios to work D-Star?
And we covered that. That's the purpose of these GMSK modem devices, and that will let you take a standard FM radio. Probably not best to go in the mic jack, but for those radios that have the 6-pin data jack on the back, if you use the 9600 baud port, because that goes directly into the modulator, and then also if you're taking it off the discriminator, those are the flattest points to be able to inject and pull back from the GMSK modem to give you the best chance of having that work with D-Star.
But there
to
again,
radiate that, not the mic jack. So you're not going to use the mic jack.
But there again, you're going to have to get in there and do some alignment on that radio. So
You should.
Yes.
Question from W0JW. If I'm listening to reflector 1C, am I also listening to reflector 1B and reflector 1A? In other words, if I have a reflector 1C program on radio, is there really need to have also 1A and 1B program as well?
So the modules are separate. Depending on the software they're using, for example, on the DV dongle software, DV tool, there's an asterisk under the module setting. So you can tell it to listen to all of the modules at the same time. But if you're using a radio, you're only going to be listening to one module at a time.
And this is also where D-Star is different from DMR. On DMR, you have the way the talk groups are set up. So these are not talk groups. So generally, no, you can't listen to more than once at a time like you can set up a receive group in DMR.
But one of the differences is anything that's transmitted on that RF module, you'll be able to hear, where the talk groups will only allow certain user IDs or radio IDs to come through in that talk group. So that is a major difference between the two technologies.
Question from W9REB. I am interested in getting started with D-Star without having any local D-Star repeaters.
Let me put on my marketing hat. That's what the DV dongle was designed for. You don't even need a radio. And then when you buy a radio, you buy a DVAP, and you can get access without having a repeater anywhere near you.
Question from KD8APO. What's a good starting radio?
That's really a price question first. If you're willing to pay for it, both the 51Plus2 and the 74 are very nice, capable radios.
Well, along to go with that is your level of patience as well. You can find some of the D-Star radios on the used market at good prices. The ones that I would recommend would be like the ID-31 that has the DR mode, just for the simplicity of setting up the call sign fields. It's not difficult. It's different than what you're used to doing. Instead of setting a PL tone or DPL tone, you're setting a repeater call sign. We mentioned earlier, if you know the frequency of a repeater, all the Icom D-Star radios, all you have to do is kerchunk the repeater. It will set your call signs for the repeater into the call sign fields. If you've already had G in the second repeater location, it will put the new repeater call sign plus the G in it, so you'll be able to go to the gateway.
And here's probably a good one to close on. From KD4UBM, how should SDR hobbyist developers embrace D-Star? Do you want us to be a part of D-Star? How should SDR, software-defined radio hobbyist developers, embrace D-Star? Do you want us to be a part of D-Star?
So Kent talked a little bit earlier about the Flex radio, which is probably the Cadillac of SDRs. So if you are in the Flex camp, you already have access to D-Star using some of their technology, and then little dongles that plug in to provide the AMBA chip to do the encoding and decoding of voice. If you're thinking about using something like a $20 RTL SDR dongle, there is software out there that will demodulate the GMSK and understand the D-Star packet format and give you the data portion, and you can see the call signs and that sort of thing. There's some bootleg software that we don't recommend to be able to do voice that actually doesn't sound very good yet. And you may be violating patents and other proprietary information if you use it. So, for the SDR experimenter, there's definitely things you can go out and do. And it really depends on how much money you want to spend on your software-defined radio.
Well, Robin, when you were experimenting with the DVSI chip, did you find any of that difficult and beyond most SDR programmers and developers' technical level?
No. You can use a DV dongle or DVAP or one of the other devices that's out there that has the AMBA chip in it. And if you're a developer, you should be able to link the software in. It just requires some fortitude. Lose it?
And looking at some of the development, you could mix your own diode kits with getting your own germanium and silicon and build your own NPN and PNP type transistors too. But some of it is just, what do you develop around a chipset that's been embraced by not only in the D-Star technology, but just about every two-way digital voice communication project out there.
And remember, all of this over here was homebrew at one point in time, except for the radios.